Another thing that popped up, and I think this was even more interesting, was that Scump had said on one of OpTic's YouTube videos, he said that he was asked to play for OpTic, and he said this last Sunday, people deciphered it to be like a few weeks ago, like December like 10th or so, so like right before Pred's news came out. So I think obviously OpTic was probably blindsided in general, but it seemed from that like date kind of stuff that they weren't sure if Pred would be able to play the weekend, like the few days before it all came out and he went back to Australia. So I think that's pretty interesting in of itself. But what do you think about this idea that it was just floated to Scump, who obviously retired a few seasons ago, one of the best players of all time, but it's like, hey, would you be open to playing like at least one match for us in these qualifiers? What do you think of that?
Let me go to the CDL website here and view the roster. He's not even that. Karma is on the roster and he's not. So that's the most interesting part about that is like he in well, it would have been MW2 when he actually retired. Like he definitely stayed on the roster after his retirement, and if they needed a sub, like he was fresh out of playing, and it would have been fine. This is a totally different circumstance where they technically would have had to add him to the roster unless he is actually a sub and it's just
Yeah.
not listed on the site. I don't know.
But didn't you say
Um,
a few weeks ago that what was it? Ben had said that they could
yeah,
file
yeah,
for like an
yeah.
emergency substitute.
I know, but that like to me when I first saw this, it was like it felt like you're asking Scump not because Scump is an optic content creator and one of the greatest Call of Duty players of all time. You're asking him because like he's on the roster. That's what it felt like to me, just because like something's going on with Pred. They got to do something quick to make a move. They don't have time to reach out to these amateurs and try and get a contract and all that yada yada. Scump's available. We throw him in, and obviously that doesn't seem like the case. So that's the most interesting tidbit to me. But can you imagine if that actually happened? Like, I feel like there are several times where COD Twitter has gone nuclear in recent years. If we didn't know anything about the Pred situation, and all of a sudden we just have Scump basically unannounced appearing in a CDL match and Pred on the like people would have been going nuts, I feel like. And I would have been texting you and we would have done an ego Chall like almost immediately after that. Like that's just what's going through my head. It would have been I mean, I would have loved to see it happen. I don't remember if it was in this clip of him saying he was asked to play or if it was in another clip that I saw on Twitter, but he was kind of just referring to like, you know, contemplating about returning to competing and that just the daily grind of watching VODs. I think it was in this clip. He mentioned like watching VODs for almost 2 hours before scrims with Rambo and then scrimming and then watching more VODs or playing eights and stuff like that. He was just that the daily grind of the competitive part, not the actual competing. Uh, he's like doesn't miss that. I don't want to misquote him or anything, but that was my interpretation of that. So, um, yeah, I mean, I guess it seems like we were closer to Scump potentially returning than we were before with him like that not even being a consideration, especially after last year, the team's coming off a world championship. Like we didn't expect Optic to make a roster move in any capacity, let alone bringing back the King. So that would have been one for the record books, and I can only imagine what the viewership numbers would have looked like, and that would have been interesting too. Where would the viewers have gone? Would they have gone to the official stream, or would they have gone to uh, Zuma's co-stream, maybe Nade Shots, or maybe Methods just does Scump's co-stream with Scump playing? That would have been uh interesting tidbit to keep an eye on too. But uh jokes aside, yeah, I mean this would have been just awesome. And obviously, I think at the same there's been that talk over the last couple of years since Scump retired about like doing a dynasty challengers team and or competing in challengers events and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure I've always said when we've talked about that, it's like it's almost a lose-lose situation of him going to challengers. Like sure, the one positive really is I guess two is that he gets to compete in an actual like tournament setting, even if it's just like an online challengers tournament or whatever. And the viewership on his stream would be absolutely insane. But it's a lose-lose in the sense of like, it how does it impact his legacy? How much do people care about him going into a challengers tournament and getting like top 16 and losing to four random amateurs just because they're amateurs that have been playing and scrimming the game together, and he's playing event with people who don't play the game competitively and haven't scrimmed at all on this actual title. Um, it'd be great content, and definitely you can sign me up for on a petition to try and get it to happen, but I don't see it ever happening. I think this was potentially like a one stop or just our one shot really to potentially get Scump back in an OpTic jersey and in a CDL match. And it seems like that it was just like a flicker basically, and now it's gone. So it's fun to talk about and fun to think about, but end of the day, I think Scump's got to be pretty happy with his career and how things are going right now on the stream.
Yeah, I would be a little more, I don't know, optimistic. Like, there's just no return in the fold for him. I think like you could see like Formal coming back. You can see other players that their careers kind of like petered out. Whoever it may be, but like they just didn't have like a good finish to their career. I mean, he literally was just like, I'm done. Like he announced his retirement before the season, got like
Yeah.
3 weeks in and was like, yeah, screw this. This is horrible. Like I can't do this anymore. And like that to me says like everything. It says, well, I can do it. It's just I don't want to. And maybe like a fill in. I definitely could see him coming in maybe like a year down the line if OpTic has to like, say Shotzi's sick or something and they don't have a fill in. They're like, hey Scump, would you just play one match this week? Like you don't really have to do anything for it. You just have to like show up and play. I don't know if like that's something that would interest him, but I could see that more than like him actually putting in any time to practice. And like what you said is the preparation, and this is pretty much for all professional sports. Like a lot of athletes say that like it's not the games, it's the practices, it's the tape study. It's like just annoying, it's draining, it can burn you out, which if he doesn't have to do that, I think that would be nice. But challengers just seems kind of like a weird fit for him and a lot of those other older guys that there's just no reason for them to do it at this point in their careers.
Yeah, and I feel like I started saying it and I might not have actually finished this thought, but going back to like the roster and actually seeing Karma listed on that roster, he's in those scrims every day as the coach. Like it makes sense. He's at least like seeing the map and dissecting the map and going over stuff with those guys. So with him being on the roster in some sort of emergency situation, it makes a lot more sense for me if Karma was to be that emergency sub. Maybe maybe Scump's playing the game more on stream. I know like the ranked play has been played with cheaters and stuff, so I don't even know if that's technically true or not. But either way, it's not like a skill thing or anything like that from you know a Scump versus Karma standpoint for an emergency sub. It's more of if Karma's on the roster, he's in the scrims, like talking to the guys and knowing what they're doing and stuff. It feels like a more natural emergency fit if Karma was to just fill in for something like that. But again, feels like this might be a one-time thing and we might not be talking about it anymore. But it's still, like I said, it was definitely fun to think and talk about.
Yeah, if he would have filled in, I guess it would have been for the C9 match, which was that Sunday, the first week of the CDL matches, and then OpTic like rolled. Like that was a very one sided match. So it would have been very interesting. Obviously, C9 had all their internet issues in week one, and there would have been, I guess, some controversy. I don't know if like it's really considered a controversy, but just some kind of drama after that match. I also wonder like if they asked Scump just because they knew there were going to be a lot of questions about Pred not playing, and like it's a lot easier to like, hey, here's Scump, and like people aren't asking nearly as many questions, or like the volume of those questions aren't as loud if you have Scump playing his first match in a few years. I don't know if that was maybe the thinking, but it would have been a cool thing nonetheless. And I hope at least it happens one more time, like where we actually know that it's his final match or something along those lines, because you don't really get that with a lot of CDL players. Like we didn't necessarily know it with Clayster or Crim6 or Karma. Like a lot of these players just kind of like, even when we talked about Clayster, it was like, well, it might be his last match. We weren't entirely sure. And with Scump, it was really that, because we figured we had 5-6 more months of him playing Call of Duty, and he's like, yeah, I'm done. Like it's over. So maybe one more match, and then we can really kind of like say goodbye, like in a way. Even though I think most people are pretty content with how Scump's career went, in general.